All right. Well, good afternoon, everybody. Let's go ahead. Let's get this webinar on the road here. But beforehand, we do have a question from Celeste. So let me just read it real quick and let's see if I can get the answer for you here. Okay, Celeste. Yeah, I see your question here. I'll respond to you kind of after this call ends, just so we can get a few screenshots of how you built out your Zap, and then we can kind of check it out on our end to see what it is going to look like. All right. So as everybody here knows, right, today's call is going to be over Zapier. I guess some things out of the way, right? What is Zapier? Zapier is essentially an integrations platform inside of like a web app. It will connect multiple programs together, and a popular one, right, is going to be the Outlook calendar syncing with your Outfield calendar. And what that means is that Outfield events will go inside of Outlook or Gmail calendar. Now, events made inside of Gmail or Outlook can also pull back inside of Outfield, but that's a little bit more tricky. And for today's call, we'll just be kind of covering how to set up an Outfield calendar event to either a Gmail or an Outlook calendar event. Then Kai, I just saw your question. This is going to be recorded and we'll send this back over to really everybody here that joined it. And then, of course, other people too if they want one. So next up, I am going to start sharing my screen here to kind of show you Zapier and what it can do. So you should be looking at my web page here and how Zapier functions. It's going to be a trigger and a action system. So a trigger, right? This is going to be the thing that causes the event. For our Zap today, we will make a Outfield to Google one. If you don't know how to get to this page, it's actually on the homepage of Zapier. You just click on this Zap button, or you can click on this Create button right here. Click on Zaps, right? Both ways will take you to the same exact page where you'd be able to start building out your very first Zap. So we'll see here, we already have a trigger and we have an action set step ready for us. That's just how it's going to be. And then for the trigger, we want this to be a calendar event created inside of Outfield. So you just want to click in on the box here where you can, of course, look at all of these apps that we have, well, that Zapier has. Now, if you don't see any, there's a search bar up here as well. So I'm going to type in Outfield and we see Outfield appear and we click on it. And from here, we need to choose the event, right? What is going to cause this trigger? I'm going to scroll down here until I see my option that's called New Calendar Event. I select it. And next up, you have to select your Outfield account. Now, by default, when you click on select, it will log in to your Outfield account that's currently logged in on this web browser. If you used Zapier before, your Outfield account may already be in here. If you don't see it, just click on this Connect New button. It will open up a separate Outfield page and kind of just authenticate your account. My account for today's purpose is already on here, so I'm going to select it. And then from here, I'd be able to select the account. So once it's selected for me, I can click on continue. That's going to take us into the next step where we can actually configure it. Now, this is where you, of course, would have to choose yourself because you don't want everybody's calendar events pulling into your own personal calendar. So I will just need to scroll down here until I see Jim Hopper appear. There are quite a few people on my team, so I'm gonna have to keep scrolling down. And it does go alphabetical by first name, so if you do have a large group and you don't see yourself, it does take some searching to see Jim Hopper. And then I click on continue, and this is gonna test, right? It's gonna look inside that Outfield account for that correct team member and try to pull out any single calendar event created. Now, mine has created three, so I can actually click on these to kind of see the information. And there's going to be a lot of information here. This is just pretty much all of the data pulled out from Outfield inside of Zapier. Most of this will actually not be used inside of our Zap that we're creating for today. So next up, you just click on the calendar event you want to test. So I'm going to bring in calendar event C. And it's important to actually look at the started at and ended at because this is where our calendar event will appear. So it's going to start on February 7th and then it's going to end on February 7th. It looks like an all-day event just by looking at my times, 0 to 23:59. And now we click on continue with selected record. From here, you're going to be building up your action step, right? What is going to happen after a calendar event gets created inside of Outfield? From here, you can select Gmail or Outlook. They're going to be both built in pretty much the same exact way. For today's call, I'm going to cover Gmail. And once you have this selected, we can now choose an action event. There's going to be quite a few, but for today, and I just realized I selected the wrong app. Apologies about that. It's Google Calendar, not Gmail. So select on the right app, and then we choose the action event. And from here, I would create an event, and it can either be a detailed event or a add event. I would select a detailed event and you go in to select your account. And it's going to work in the same exact way. If you don't have one connected, just click on this button here. If you have multiple, Gmail or Outlook accounts, it's just going, you can select one of them. But since I've already loaded mine inside of here, I will select one. Actually, looks like I need to add in a new one. So from here, you click on this button, right? Select the proper email you want to use, and it will go ahead and connect the account. And then we click on continue. This is the configuration step, and probably the most important step here because this is how you can customize your own calendar event. From here, of course, you need to choose your calendar. So I'm going to select my calendar here. And then we need a summary, right? A description. Now, these will be optionals. The only ones that will be required is if there's a red asterisk in the top right. So where it says calendar, where it says start and end time, we need those values for this Zap to save properly. So let's just start building it out. To start off with, we have summary, right? This is probably going to be the title of our calendar event. And what you're able to do is you can actually add a summary in one of two ways. First off is you can freehand text, right? So I can say event created from Outfield. Now, if I were to call it just event created from Outfield, every single calendar event that would be created inside either Google Calendar or your Outlook calendar will just be titled event created from Outfield. However, this can be dynamically changed, and that's going to be from the plus button to the very right, where you're actually able to select a some data. So of course this would be the title. So I call it Todd's birthday. Now this is only for this specific calendar event. So if I were to call this restock, revisit, right, sampling, every single title I make for a calendar event, that title will dynamically change as long as I click on this plus button and I select my title here. So that is going to be my summary. Now, next up comes in the description. So one thing to note is that when you're making a calendar event instead of Outfield, you can throw in titles and notes. The notes section would most likely appear in this description area. So I can click on this plus button. Now, sometimes, right, when we're trying to scroll through this, there's a lot of data to look at. We have a search bar here, which will kind of look for the information. So as we see right here, I can add in the notes, but since this specific calendar event has no data, nothing would appear, but I still want to add it in there just because if any other calendar event I make will have any form of notes inside of it, I want that information appearing. And then here are some optional ones, right? Can be the location. Now, if it's not important for you to know the location, just have the event appear on your calendar. You can actually leave this blank. But if you want to add in the location, right, we have the plus button. And then, of course, we can look for the address as well. Then add to conferencing. By default, it's going to be no. We're going to keep it that way. And here we need to choose our start time and our end time. Now, when it comes to the start time, we need to click on the plus button, and the term, the data you're looking for will actually be the started at. And then for end time, it's going to be ended at. This will also be important too, just making sure you have the right time up here. Then here's some other options too, right? Repeating frequency, when does the repeating end, and then how many times does it repeat? This will be, of course, optional. I'm going to keep this one blank. As we can see all day, I'm going to have it as no as well. And then here's some other fields that you can fill out, like the attendees, visibility, the color of the calendar events. You can choose to set reminders as well. But from here, this is all I'm going to put in. Of course, you can always come in and fill out some more fields if you want. And we click on continue. And then we want to click on test to actually test this calendar event. And what it's going to do, it's going to throw it inside of my calendar here somewhere on the 17th. And here it is, right? Event created from Outfield, Todd's birthday. So to kind of confirm it's going to work for every other calendar event you make, first thing's super important, you need to publish it, right? This would actually save it and then turn it on. If you don't publish it, essentially, right, the Zap will remain in a draft stage and it's no longer going to run. So once we have it published, it will let you know here, but then from here in the top left, this will be switched on. You can switch this off at any time, but we're going to keep it on. And then I'm going to start making some calendar events inside of my Outfield account. So of course I can go inside a calendar and let's click this add event button to create a calendar event inside of Outfield. And this is where we can throw in some information. So let's say that I was going in for a sampling from February 20th from 2:30 to 3:30 p.m. From here, I can add in repeating functionalities, right? I'm not, for this one, I'll keep it blank. We select a place or a contact. Let's select my HEB plus. And here I can add in some notes. Let's put in sample every waffle. And once we're done here, we click on save. And then we essentially just need to wait for the polling to appear, for the poll to happen. Now, what I mean by poll is like the time it takes for Zapier to kind of just check if something new has happened inside of Outfield. Now, depending on the plan that you have, there will be different polling rates. I believe on the free plan, it is going to be every 15 minutes. So once 15 minutes happens, right, it's going to look for new calendar events that will trigger the app. And of course, as you're on the paid version of Zapier, it'll get down to like one minute and even to like the seconds of how fast it's going to poll here. And as you can see, when I refresh my page, my calendar event has been created. The event created from sampling, and of course, in the description will be sample every waffle. Now, Outlook will look, pretty much the same. What I can show you this real quick. And of course, I need to turn my Zap off to do any edits. So if instead, let's say this time, I need to make it on an Outlook calendar and not on a Google Calendar, you would select the Outlook app. You choose the event, which would to be create an event. And then for the account, you select the account to create it under. So then from here, I click on continue, and there's going to be, right, the same exact fields. You can select the calendar that's under the subject, which will be the title. We have the start time and the end time, which will be started at and ended at. That will appear. And then, of course, you can see location name, sensitivity, attendees, the description. This is where you throw in the notes. And this is where you can kind of throw in all of the information you need inside of your calendar event. And you go on continue. And you go into test step, and that would also throw a calendar event inside of your Outlook calendar. Now with that being said, let's go look at some questions here to see if anybody has questions, but looks like they have been answered from our team here. Now, this example I showed you, right, this is one of many zaps that you can create, right? As long as the app is inside Zapier, there's a very good chance that you can build a zap to kind of, automate some things. And each zap you can think of as an automation. So calendar events to Google Calendar would be one zap. Calendar events to the Outlook calendar would be another zap. However, right, there is going to be really no limit to what zaps you can create. There's really a lot when it comes to Zapier. They have their own built-out tools as well. They have a filter tool. They have a kind of like a formatter tool. It's really, it's all super useful whenever you're trying to build out zaps inside of Outfield. And a few that we've built out before will be if you sent an email, let's say, to somebody, if you send an email out, as long as that email exists inside of Outfield, so if it's tied to an account, it will also log that email as an activity inside of Outfield too. But we've also built out connections, from Outfield to HubSpot, Outfield to QuickBooks. Um, and right, there's really no limit when it comes to building out your own custom zaps here. Now let's talk about, the plans inside of Outfield, right? Just so you're kind of familiar with it. Outfield does have a free plan. Um, and there are some limitations to it. First off, there cannot be multiple steps. So this is why the calendar ones are most popular, just because it is going to be two steps, our trigger and our action. If any zap you make requires, let's say, another step in between, or just multiple steps, unfortunately, the free plan does not cover that. And then, of course, the polling rate is a little bit slower as well. So at 15 minutes. So if you don't see your zap immediately come in to your calendar, what that means, right, is sometimes there's going to be a wait before Zapier checks to see if any new data has appeared inside of your Outfield account. And then really the last limitation is going to be, there's actually two more. One of the limitations is going to be premium apps. So some of the applications inside of Outfield are going to be premium. And what that means, right, is that you need to have a paid version of Zapier to work. So of course, if we go into QuickBooks Online, you'll notice that there is going to be a little yellow box with the Pro next to it. That's going to let you know, right, you need the paid version of Zapier. And then last but not least, the final restriction of a free plan is going to be the amount of zaps that can happen inside of Zapier. The free plan will limit you at about 100 zaps, and what that means, in kind of terms that's more familiar, is that essentially, you only 100 calendar events you make every single month inside of Outfield will appear in either your Outlook or your Google Calendar page. So, of course, if you are making more than 100 calendar events, right, not every single one is going to appear. And you can kind of track how many zaps you're using is if we open up our sidebar here or go into the page, we have this section down here, which will kind of show you the included tasks inside of Outfield. So you'll have a limit of 100 if you are using the free plan of Zapier. But of course, right, if everybody on your team were to make a Zapier account, that's going to be 100 calendar events synced over every single month for everybody on your team here. So we have some questions so we have some questions, and Celeste was asking, will it add from Outlook to Outfield as well? And looks like Tim is actually asking the same question from Google Calendar to the Outfield calendar. And they're saying it's a little bit difficult, and that is true. So how calendar events work inside of Outfield is that we need an account essentially, right? And to kind of show you, if I go in to make a new calendar event and I fill in the title, so let's say sampling once again, I select the time, but I don't select the place or contact. And I try to click save, what's going to happen, right, is that the calendar event is not going to be saved. And this is just because the calendar events are also tied into a routing system as well. Now, it is possible to bring in calendar events from Outlook or your Google Calendar inside of Outfield, but it is going to be much trickier. What will essentially happen is that, of course, we will have the trigger event start off as Google Calendar. So let's do a new event. Let's select my account. And then the action, right? It will have to create the event inside of Outfield. We select my account. And we continue. So as you can see here, right, the very first step is the account ID. Now this is, of course, tied in to your account inside of Outfield. And the problem is, right, is that most I'm gonna say probably every time you make a calendar event, right, not inside of Outfield, you're not really putting in the account ID. So what will have to happen is that a calendar event that you make inside of Outfield has to have a unique identifier that we can search by. So let me kind of show you a good example of one of them, and that's going to be the email of who was the attendee inside of Outfield. So we go to HEB Plus. Let me just find the email that it's assigned to. And that is going to be my other email account, but let's go in, let's make an event here. We just need to find the right one, which will be this one right here. So you press on continue with the selected record, and then we actually need another step. So, like I was saying, right, by adding the second step, this will no longer be a free plan inside of Outfield. But essentially, how it works is that we do need to do a search step, which would be finding the account. And then we need to search by a piece of information. And how this works is we gotta find the correct email being sent out. Of course, account type, this can help if you know it's going to be with the place every single time. That can help as well. And then this would essentially go ahead, right, test the accounts to find it. And it looks like it's failed, right? Just because it is kind of complicated. And from here, this is pretty much no longer going to be super helpful. But essentially, we need another step that's called a formatter because we need to format the text inside of Outfield. And we gotta kind of extract the email address. As you can see here, right, this is quite a lot of information. Text to line item. Here we go. As you can see from here, we need to format it to kind of separate the columns from the attendees. And then on the configure step, we need to add in a second search to look for the output here. That looks like it didn't output it correctly. As you can see here, right, there's a lot to do with Zapier, so also trying to figure this out. I assume you would need a line item to text, probably might be right. Of course, we need to separate this out for Outfield or for the attendee emails. There we go. So it looks like that was the right piece of information we want. Then from here, right, you would need to throw in the what it gets pulled out. And I do believe the reason why it looks like this is just how the testing of Zapier actually works inside of Outfield. But once we get into here, you need to, of course, test the step, which will find the account. And what that's going to look like is, let me just show you real quick. If I just were to search by the actual account email, and I spelled Gmail incorrectly. Apologies about that. Right. So you see, once you format it, then it will kind of find the ID for the account. Then from here, we have to go in to create the calendar event, throw in the ID that we found, throw in the calendar event, which will be a planned check-in, the members, the person that created it, which will be Jim Hopper. You need to load in a lot more calendar. Then we need to throw in the start time and the end time as well. Then for title and notes, we go in here, we throw in the title or the summary. Then inside of here, right, we want to throw in the descriptions and we go into continue. We will test the step and that will pull in that calendar event to my Outfield one. And this is actually the one that I just created, the sampling event, right, sample here. And so that's why, right, when it comes to making this zaps inside of Zapier, it's going to be a lot more complicated to pull in Google Calendar or the Outlook calendar to Outfield. And then Celeste, you have another question, right? That 100 per month. That one is going to be by the Zapier account. So if you had a Zapier account, right? And so everybody else in your team made their own individual Zapier accounts, they would each have 100 per month. However, if you decide to build out everybody's zaps inside of your account, that will be shared between all of the team members inside of, right, all the members inside your team. So it can be built out in multiple different ways. All right, and then to kind of wrap it up here, what I covered today was Zapier, just one form of integrations. We do have other built-out integrations, not through Zapier, but with another integrations partner that's called Rollout. Some of these that will include for Rollout will be, right now, it will be Zoho, Acumatica. That one is one in progress. We're having one in progress for another one called Airtable. Um, Right. And then for kind of for rollouts, it's very similar to Zapier, where a bunch of different, applications will upload their API, like their information inside of rollout, and then they build out the connectors. However, it's a little bit more technical on the sense that you can't really create them by yourself. You need a kind of a dev team to make it for you. So if you do have any ideas for integrations that you want to build out and you don't see it being possible inside of Zapier, you can still reach out to us. We are partnered with Rollout, and as long as the app exists inside of Rollouts, we are able to kind of go in there and build our own integrations for you as well. But that is going to conclude everything I wanted to cover on today's webinar, right? Kind of Zapier. Celeste, I did see that last question. I'll follow up with you after this call, just to ask for some screenshots to see what's happening. But if nobody else had any final questions, what we'll do is we will end this webinar, but be on a lookout for kind of this recording to send it over to you.